Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 52. Yeah, 52. I was just trying to get it right. 52 was even, to me, sometimes it's a surprise that I'm still around. It's now more than a year. It's not that I lost motivation. It's just incredible that you are still here with all the stamina, energy, motivation, will, all the positive things that make a good interaction. So uh, we are set for another, what I call raw and real conversation, no filters. We just try to get the most out of the dialogue and get some lessons along the way. So it should be something simple, but it seems that it's not as easy these days because people seem to go with the narrative because it just serves their interest. So I decided to invite Geraldine Komisky for a chat. She's an award-winning journalist. She's also an author, and she was writing a book, and actually was published. It's already published. It was published last year about a very controversial figure here in Ireland, Ian Bailey. But I promise we'll talk about Ian Bailey, but we also talk about her. So the two things will be part of the conversation. So you are very welcome, Geraldine. I just got to know you are around the corner.
Thank you, Victor. But I find nice to meet you anyway.
Yeah, I was looking forward for that chat. So you've been around in journalism for quite some time, and
Yeah.
I think things radically change in the field and around. And you interact with numerous people. So what was, let's say, the biggest challenge you encountered, and how did you handle it?
Oh God, I mean, I couldn't even begin to say. I mean, there's so many. Journalism. Journalism itself is a challenge now at the moment because I'm actually not doing much journalism now. I moved into ghostwriting during the pandemic, and I find journalism is dead. Really, mainstream journalism is finished because, first of all, there's kind of citizen journalism taking over, and the newspapers basically have their own kind of system that most. Yeah, I just don't think that I could function as a journalist in the mainstream media now at the moment. So I think it's all kind of independent journalism like your own, and then that carries its own risks. So and it also is also very expensive to do research. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually doing kind of more fiction, horror fiction. I'm helping people with their books and mentoring people, and I'm being mentored as well. So but I mean, the Ian Bailey book is kind of it is journalism, and it's based on journalism I did years ago as well. So that's and also more recent interviews because he asked me to help him with memoirs, and that's how it started because he saw I was working as a ghostwriter. So that's the challenges in journalism. That it's hard to kind of it's changed so much. I mean, when I started in journalism, we didn't even use computers. So that's how long ago I started in journalism. And I suppose the biggest challenge is getting the best stories, getting the editor to agree to let you spend a lot of time on a story, and no editor will ever really. It's not like in the movies where you can spend months on the same story. It's never happened for me in real life. You always get moved on because they don't have the time, and they don't have the resources, and they don't have the money to send journalists on very long investigative assignments. So I've loads of stuff that I want to do that I never got a chance to do, and I probably never. I think every journalist has a lot of stories they want to cover and they want to write about, and half finished investigations that they hadn't got the time to complete, and they hadn't got the resources. So I suppose that's my biggest challenge. If I have to have, the writing part is easy, the research part, getting people to interview, all of that is easy. The actual journalism is actually very easy. It's just money, resources, time. That's the difficult part of journalism.
Yeah. And I think that figure of the editor can be quite tricky because on one hand he can be helpful, but on other he can come across as a censor machine because
the editor. It's not. I don't blame the editors, by the way. I just want to say I don't blame the editors because I mean they have to work for a company, and they're constrained by budget and all the other constraints. So and also there's advertising. I mean, okay, when I was very young, there was a case with the Irish Times, and this is when I was a teenager, and I got this story about animal rights protesters protesting outside a department store in Dublin. And the Irish Times are going to pull it because the advertising department didn't want to run the story. It was actually about an anti-fur protest. So they had a furrier had Switzer's. It's gone now. It's a big department store in Dublin, but it's gone. It's where Brown Thomas is now, I think. So they they were going to pull their advertising budget, which was a lot of money at the time, and it was a whole year's advertising budget. And the advertising department wanted to pull the story, but the news features editor was a lovely man called Howard Kinley. I think everyone in journalism at the time everyone who's would know who Howard Kinley was. He decided to go ahead with it, and the deputy editor, Conor Brady, put it through and ran my story. So I mean, that was great as a teenager, but that was a big challenge, and it just showed where editors stood up to the advertising department. But most of the time, I think the advertising people will win in a case like that, because it costs the newspaper a lot of money.
What's the thing that you missed from journalism, and what's the thing that you are happy to stay away from?
What am I happy to stay away from? I'm not happy to stay. I'm happy to stay away from silly stories. I mean, I did a lot of silly stories about silly things, and with celebrities, especially celebrities and sport. I absolutely hate sport, and I'm bored of celebrities. So between the two, and cookery, and that anything to do with cookery, DIY, house decorating, I'm absolutely bored of all this stuff on the TV and in the papers. Nearly half the paper is covered in sport, and I don't understand the appeal of people kicking a ball around the field, and just give every one of them a ball. And I don't even know how many people are in a football team, I've forgotten. So just give them all a ball and let them keep one instead of fighting over it. I just don't get football. I don't get golf. I think it's one of the most boring things ever invented. And the same with celebrities. I just don't see why anyone would want to write about them or interview them, because they're always in the papers. They're full of PR. They make up stuff about themselves, and what they do say is usually boring as well. So basically, boring shite. Basically, I don't want to write about.
Yeah.
Sorry. I really feel passionately about this. I've said this to editors before. Please don't send me to interview celebrities. I'm bored with them, and please just. I'm sick of sport as well. Unless I'm talking to the fans. The fans are usually more interesting than the actual sports people.
Yeah, and I would say like the most annoying thing about
people, sorry.
Yeah. Also, the most annoying thing about talking to celebrities is that they tend to be full of themselves. So they think they are some sort of gods, and they don't really know their side.
They have to act that way. Maybe they're not. I mean, some of them are nice people, you get to know them, but the part you have to put in the paper is the boring part. The interesting part is the bit that they can't talk about, and their PR agent won't let them talk about. But I mean, I'm interested in people when they're authentic, but not when they're putting forward a kind of a mask, and they have this veneer, and they have to present themselves in a certain way. I don't like it when they self-censor as well, or when anyone censors them. So I'm interested in ordinary people. That's what I always wanted to do. So that's it, really.
Talking of ordinary people, I think they struggle these days because they're not that much represented, and the media is not really trying to look after their needs. I think there was a time that the media would be somehow the voice of the people, in the sense that we'll run investigation, we'll try to show what's going on behind the scenes that ordinary people will be aware of. And all of a sudden, it's not happening anymore. Is that a vision that you share?
I think the ordinary people have all migrated to social media, and that when the newspapers want to write anything about ordinary people, they do get some interviews with them, but they tend to pick it off someone's Facebook page. I mean, for example, when there's a tragic death, instead of actually, years ago, we used to have to do an awful thing, which was called a death knock. You'd have to knock on someone's door. Now, I would hate somebody coming to my door unannounced. I really hate it. I don't like anyone knocking. I don't like beggars and people selling things. So the last thing I'd want is someone knocking on my door wanting to interview me. I just tell them to go book themselves, basically. But I used to have to knock on doors, and most of the time, the door got slammed in my face. If it was kind of a person who it was some connection with crime. But I didn't do much crime stories, but I understood that. But then later on, they come and talk to me, and it'd be usually off the record, so it's something I couldn't print in the paper. Now what they do is, instead of taking this risk, instead of sending a journalist out to interview somebody, they actually just go onto their Facebook page or their Instagram or their X page, and they just quote them. So I think journalists are actually in their offices now, and they're afraid to go out. They're afraid to meet people, and probably with good reason, because people are very angry at the media, at the mainstream media at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always angry at journalists knocking on the doors, but I mean, they're more angry now at as they feel kind of that the media is not reporting facts, and they feel if they do talk to the media that a narrative will come out that they're crazy or something, or that they're far right if they complain about the government. And I mean, you know, I've been called far right, and I'm certainly not. I mean, actually, I've got a lot of left wing views, but I think you're far right if you challenge anything to do with the government at the moment.
Yeah. That's absolutely.
I mean, I really am a lefty in many ways. I mean, the people. It's very strange for me to be called far right, but you know, you know, because I have so many left wing views. But they, you know, everyone's terrified of being called. Well, they're not terrified of it, but they're just sick of it. They're sick of being branded far right for not agreeing with the government.
We just got a hello from Evoy Talk. So what is Evoy Talk? Evoy Talk is Evoy Talk, actually. It's a show we run here. It's a football show, so it's not for you, but I need to tell people out there. It's a football show we run every Thursday, so we'll be back here talking about the League of Ireland. So guys, if you are into that, we will talk with the lads again on Thursday, 7 in the evening, so stay around. And also, if you are enjoying this conversation, give us a thumbs up and share, because we'll be here for another hour or so. So there's a lot to discuss. And if you haven't subscribed, please so. The chat box is open, so any questions, just drop in the chat box. The other one I want to ask you is, you got an award when you were at early stages. Seamus, is it Seamus?
Seamus Kelly Memorial Award.
I was trained with Irish words. Seamus Kelly. So got an award at early stages. How was that experience? So was that an incentive? Were you intimidated? How did you react to such?
Yeah, I was thrilled to get it. I mean, I was 18, and I was actually 18 for an article I wrote when I was 8, but I was actually well, no, I was 19, but I was 20 when it was presented to me. But you know, it was for journalists under the age of 25, and I was just thrilled to get it because it was an article I wrote about the Reserve Army, which is called Reserve Army now. At the time, it was called the FCA, which is an Irish term, Forza Cusanta O'Toole. So at the time there were no girls in it, and I went along and spent a weekend running around the hills with these gorgeous young guys my own age, and wrote an article about them. So I had a lot of fun writing about the FCA, and I was perfectly chaperoned. You know, there were army regular army guys in charge of it, and they were all very kind of paternal towards me. So I you know, nothing, but I'm just saying that I wrote about this, and I had a lot of fun about it. It was in the papers. I had it in a local paper, and then the national paper took it up, and then I decided to write a longer article because it had to be a longer article to enter for this competition. So I entered for it, and basically I wasn't campaigning for girls to join it or anything, but I did say that you know, what it was like, and what it was like to join, what it was like to defend your country, and what it was like to learn how to defend your country in a mock exercise. And you know, it was just a descriptive piece. It was a feature article. So I just won an award for I think more for the writing part of it than it wasn't really an award for research or anything. It was just the fact that I talked my way into this thing, and I interviewed these boys about my own age who were having a very interesting weekend hobby, and it was actually every weekend and a few weeks every summer they took part in this. So it was more of a kind of a slice of life kind of feature that I won it for. And I don't know if they don't give it out every year. I don't know if they stopped giving it out because there was a bursary for it, and they said they would only give it out if the articles were of sufficient quality. So I don't know. You know, I don't know if they run out of money or not by now, but only a few journalists have been given it. So it was a great honor to get, and I was absolutely chuffed to win it.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
I don't usually enter competitions. You know, I mean, most journalists don't have the time to enter competitions, but I think I don't even remember how I found out about this. I think one of my editors told me about it, but I just because you know I don't always. I think an awful lot of awards in media, but people giving their friends awards, you know, giving each other awards. Media is very small in Ireland, and people who know each other will give awards to someone that they all know. I didn't really have many contacts at the time, so I was sort of thrilled to get this, and I've met a few of the other award winners, and they, you know, actually one of my editors later on told me that this was an editor I had after this, told me that he'd won the award as well, and it was just, he was a brilliant editor actually, Old Corrie. So I find that you know, it was nice to be part of a small elite group that won it.
Yeah. So
and especially here, you know.
Yeah, let's stay with the youngsters now. So let's say you encounter someone who is very excited to join or to get into journalism, let's put it that way. What would you tell that person other than change career perspective?
I would tell him don't do it. I'd say don't do it. Whatever you do,
I
just
knew
I'd
it.
say
I knew
I'd
it.
say don't do what I did. Okay, I'd say for example, I didn't even go to university. I said don't go to university. Go to university, or even better still, find a trade. Just find something like I don't know, be a builder or something like that. There's plenty of money in building, or find something you're passionate about that doesn't involve absolute dire poverty and lots of risk and precarious existence. Because journalism is freelance journalism, which I've done. It's very precarious. You're living from hand to mouth, and you find that you spend everything you earn, you spend it in expenses. You're spending it in petrol for your car. You have to stay out the night in a hotel. I couldn't live this way anymore, and I wouldn't advise a young person to do it. And if you're going to be stuck in an office doing it, that's a safe job, and there's no point in doing journalism. You're just going to stay at home doing it online or doing it in an office. You have to actually get out there and do it properly. So I think if you can't do it properly, and if you can't afford to do it properly, and you can't afford the research and the resources, it's probably pointless. It's not a good career at this time anyway, unless you can get a sponsor or someone you can afford to invest in you.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say find something else and then maybe do a bit of journalism on the side, which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah. That makes more sense. But I remember when there was some prestige about being a journalist, especially if it was on TV, say at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., it will be something that will bring a lot of reputation because your face will be there, your words, your voice, everything, and people will rely on you. There was some authority about being a journalist. Whereas today, I think it's the opposite.
Mm. Well, I think that everyone's on TV now because anyone can go onto YouTube, or like anyone
Yeah.
can have their own podcast. So it really is. I mean, the prestige part I think is gone. I don't think anyone respects journalism. Certainly not mainstream journalism anymore. Even though there are some good mainstream journalists, but I don't think people respect journalism anymore. It's one of those careers that I think nearly everything is being disrupted now. Every career. But I would say get one of the kind of the more reliable careers to, something that you can at least make a living from. That's what I advise people to do anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, people told me that years ago. People used to say to me, "Don't do journalism." When I was younger, I mean, I was 14 when I started, and they were trying to put me off, and it didn't work. So I don't think they take my advice anyway. They'll still go for it because young
Yeah.
people just do what they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes people need to make mistakes, and that's the only
I mean,
way
yeah,
they
I
can
think it's
learn.
part of being young, isn't it? And the other thing is, I know, like I mean, honestly, it's not been a good career financially, but I think that I've learned so much from it, and I'm probably more resilient than people who've had safe careers. I've certainly got great coping skills for adversity, and I've learned how to protect myself in situations, and I've learned so much and so much random stuff that you couldn't learn if you had a safe career. I don't think you could buy the kind of informal education I've had through journalism. So
Yeah,
I've had
let's move
access to,
to yeah,
you can interview just about anyone you like. You can have any experience you want. You can travel the world. You can do a lot of things in journalism that you couldn't do if you weren't a
yeah,
journalist.
yeah. Let's move into writing. So you said that it was sometime during COVID that you started doing ghostwriting. Can you let people know what is it? Because I think for some people it's still a concept that they haven't heard of. So what is
Yeah.
ghostwriting exactly?
But it's writing something in someone else's voice. A person who doesn't like writing, I mean, there's a lot of people who they have a lot to say, but they just don't. They're not used to writing, and it's a skill. You have to build it up over years. And they just want someone to put a bit of polish on what they've written already, or they want someone to actually write in their voice, which is what I did. So what I did is I wrote articles for people, and they actually pitched them to newspapers. And so I noticed some of those articles, and they also mostly opinion pieces and business pieces, and then anything from wedding speeches to newspaper articles. And I said I wouldn't do books, but I actually have helped a few people with their books as well. I've helped them with short stories, and written little passages for them, and just used my own kind of hard-won skills to help somebody else get a kind of a foothold in writing. And I find that people did that for me when I was younger. They used to, well, they didn't actually write stuff for me, but editors used to help me. They'd help me to rewrite something. So I've been doing the same now. I've been giving it a bit back, and of course they paid me for it. But that was how Ian Bailey contacted me. Actually, he asked me to help him polish up his memoirs because he said he was just struggling with them because there was so much stuff, so much material, and he had a drink problem as well. So it was very hard. I mean, I can't imagine how he achieved so much. I mean, he got a law degree and a master's in law, and then he was writing his memoirs. while struggling with a drink problem. So, anyway, I said I kind of said to him, like, I'm not going to do this for you. I'm not going to, formally, I'm not going to take part in your memoir or get help you write it or anything like that. He just kind of gave me a few pointers, but I decided not to get involved because I thought I want to be objective when it comes to a person I've written about. And also, I felt that I get dragged into this drama, and I didn't want to be Ian Bailey's friend because if once you're somebody's friend, you're on their side, and I thought I'd never no one will ever respect me as a journalist if I do that. But I did feel a bit sad about it, like when he died, and I thought, geez, maybe I should have helped him a bit more because I think he was up against a lot. I felt sorry for him in the end.
And I think he was expecting. I think you mentioned, if I remember well, on your interview with Now Boyland, that at the very last days he was sleeping on the living room, that he could be seen from the window or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, this was actually common knowledge. He was living in Bantry and he was looking out the window, and this is in some of the newspapers as well. He was living in a kind of a two-room flat, just a bedroom and a kind of a kitchen living room, and he wouldn't even sleep in the bedroom. He's such a big man, he couldn't sleep in a normal bed, I think, and he had his feet up on some wooden pallets. And Jim Sheridan used to visit him, and actually a photographer colleague of mine used to visit him as well. Quite a few friends of his that have been in touch with me, they used to visit him, but he used to look out the window because he wanted to be he wanted people to see him at all times, and people said that was narcissistic, but I think it was just fear. He was afraid of being kidnapped and taken away to France, because it could happen. It has happened before. There's a famous case. What was the guy's name? I don't want to get his name wrong, but this guy was kidnapped in Germany and brought to France for justice once for a trial, and he was just literally kidnapped and brought across the border and dumped outside a police station. So he was afraid somebody would just shove him into a van, when no one's looking, and drive him to the ferry and bring him to France. So it could, in theory, it could have happened to him. So he was, so he wanted to be seen at all times. So he had to sleep with his face up over the window so everyone in the street could see him. I mean, I can't imagine what it'd be like living like that.
Yeah, it has to be a nightmare, like that you are known for a potential murder, but no one knows if it happened or not, and there is people in France trying to bring you to jail, but you don't know exactly how it's going to happen. The Irish state is with you, but not you never know how much. So yeah, it has to be.
The Irish state protected him, really. The Irish state protected him, but people in Ireland believed he was guilty, and they genuinely believed. And people in France, I spoke to Sophie Toscan de Plantier's uncle, and he actually genuinely believed Ian Bailey did it. That family relied on what the guards believed and what the people here believed. And I don't think anyone, who said he was guilty did. I know they all genuinely believed it. But I think they're basing it on basically what they heard from other people and their own gut instinct, and I just think that
or maybe from Netflix, like that Netflix documentary was very, very much biased. It was
but it was like much of the media coverage too. Much of the media coverage in Ireland was biased towards him as well. And he took a libel action and he lost it. But I mean, I don't know how he lost the libel action really against the newspapers at the time, but he did. I mean, I know the judge believed that he was. The judge said called him. I can't remember the exact words, and I quoted him exactly in the book. But the judge did say that as an abuser of women, that he was basically a kind of person who would commit a murder. So it was just his word against other people's. I mean, I know he beat up his partner. He admitted that, and I know it was very distasteful, and he spent the rest of his life basically doing penance for that. But I can't square that with a person walking across the mountains like late at night while drunk, or driving a car across all these zigzag switchback roads late at night and killing a person he didn't even know, or at best only knew to see. I mean, he had no motive to kill her. And
so
I would say opportunity.
Would you tend to think that he is innocent?
Yeah, I do. I think, but innocent of murder, certainly. I mean, and he's been remarkably non-violent all these years since. But I don't think he could have done it. So that's why I think it is not because he wouldn't. I don't think. I mean, certainly would have been capable of it. But I just don't think he had the opportunity or the motive to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if it would be, I'd say, alcohol-related event.
Yeah, but I mean, he was full of alcohol that night. But I mean, she lived like, I mean, as the crow flies, she lived about 2.5 miles away over a mountain. It was the
Mm.
middle of winter, and you know, the idea that a man could trek across a mountain at night with all these rat holes in it. I mean, I walked around there. I tried to do it myself, and it was just impossible. And there's a back road. I mean, Sophie's uncle told me that he went along the back road and he walked it, and he said Ian Bailey could have done it faster than him. But that back road, I mean, it was worse then. It was worse back in the 90s. But even when I went, I tried it in 2011, and it was a hard trek, and it was up a hill and up over really rough road, and I don't think a drunk man without falling into the bog,
Yeah.
would be able to do it. So it just doesn't make sense to me. And you know, he came home stocious. He was so drunk that a guard was planning to follow him. Guard recently said he was going to follow him to try and catch him for drunk driving, and he'd left. So I can't see, if he drove home drunk, then he got up and walked across up the
Mm.
roads or across the moors, or drove. It just on some sort of a mad urge to go and meet this woman and knock on her door, and then nobody heard her scream. I mean, I doubt she was killed up at the doorway, because the neighbours would surely have heard her. I believe she was probably killed down by the gate, where the neighbours wouldn't have heard her. And I actually believe it was Alfie, her neighbour, that probably was the only person I think could have done it,
Yeah.
and the only person had a motive. And
So
his partner wouldn't have heard it then if it was down at the gate,
yeah.
because it was kind of down a steep slope from the house.
Mm. So your view is not exactly aligned with the narrative. So I'm sure you see the lots of backlash. How did you handle the people's reaction, comments, feedback, all that?
Well, I thought it was I thought it was strange the way I got this kind of visceral backlash. I mean, people were actually, I kind of got a little taste of not what it felt like to be Ian Bailey, but I could see what he was up against, because some of the comments I got. I went on radio, and the comments that people sent in were kind of, oh, you didn't know him, how can you claim, were you not intimidated by this man? Most women would be intimidated by all this kind of stuff. It was just their own gut instinct and their own absolute visceral hatred for the man that they had known for years. So I could see that it just gave me an insight into the way people think, and the way they really fool themselves. I think they don't mean to think like this, but it's the kind of human herd instinct where for safety, people like to be together. But he was an outsider, and he was kind of a blow-in of blow-ins. I know West Cork is full of people, outsiders supposed to be, but they're not really outsiders. I mean, they're all kind of a certain social class, or they're in the arts and culture group, or they're locals who have a history of family history there. But Ian Bailey didn't fit in. He didn't tick any of the boxes. He was just a complete outsider in every sense of the word. So I think people, when they have this kind of, everyone has a herd mentality. I mean, even Ian Bailey, he hadn't found his tribe, but if he had found his tribe, I mean, there would have been outsiders there. I think we all make somebody another. I mean, he was othered, but we all did this to people without meaning to, I think. So that's what happened to him. I mean, yeah, sorry.
No, you can finish.
Yeah, no, you're Portuguese and you're in Ireland. I mean, do you ever feel like an outsider sometimes? You must.
I do, but I enjoy it, and I use that for my own benefit and advantage.
Yeah.
Of course, there are challenges and obstacles about that, but there is also fun. So it really depends how you approach it. But I have to say, in 8 years that I live in this country, there was only one occasion that I was object of racism, only one, and that's nothing. One time in 8 years, and that was in the Liberties. And let's call it the aggressors were a couple of crazy kids in there. I don't know. Yeah, they were 15, 16. So I don't even take it seriously. They were just looking for trouble and happened to be me the victim. Let's put it like that. It wasn't anything remarkable that I will bring it to the table. So I think it's great. I feel very much.
Did they attack you or anything like that, or did they? What happened?
No, basically they just throw even funny. They even just throw a little back on me. That was it. Yeah. And they started to laugh.
It's not a nice feeling, though, is it? I mean, it's horrible, isn't it, to be treated like that? But I'm just saying, you're a person. You're a personable person. You can get on well with people. You're able to talk to people. But I think Ian Bailey wasn't really. He was kind of arrogant, and he didn't help himself by being so arrogant to people, and he rubbed people up the wrong way. So it didn't. His personality did go against him, but that's no reason to blame him for murder. That's the thing. But he did have a personality issue. Especially when he was younger. I think he mellowed a lot as he got older. He became this. He was still a bit arrogant, but in a kind of more. He was laughing at himself as he got older. He wasn't a complete narcissist. I think he became more self-aware as he got older, but he couldn't help just being his usual. He was a bit of a showman. And I think he would have got away with it if he hadn't been so arrogant when he was younger. I mean, I think the old Ian Bailey, if he'd arrived here as an old man, he might have been accepted more. It's just, when he came over here first, he was this very arrogant man.
Yeah, at some point I thought that he was just targeted for being male, white, and hetero, which nowadays is not the best combo.
Yeah,
Does
even then,
that make any sense, or is it just me? I don't know, traumatized with the 21st century.
Yeah, but he was kind of like I mean, there were some people who actually some people actually had the good grace to admit this, that he was kind of like he should have been on the stage, and he was very charming and handsome and all that, but he didn't have he had the charm, he had the good looks, but he just didn't use them, and his arrogance kind of was the thing most people remembered about him.
Yeah,
he would have been okay.
It happens quite a lot, Geraldine, actually. I met a couple of guys, like very handsome. They have like a decent personality, but their social skills are quite poor. And and at the end of the day, like it's fantastic to see, fantastic and tragic at the same time. They end up suffering more than those who don't have the looks and the wealth, or the luck or anything like that, because they know that they have it all, but end of the day they get nothing. So that's a bigger pain, because you kind of feel that the road is mine, and then because I'm not capable, I end up alone, angry, bitter, and maybe that was his case. I don't know. I would like to have.
He wasn't wealthy, though. I mean, he certainly wasn't wealthy, but another thing about him was, I think, the fact that he had this plummy accent, but he put it on. It was a fake accent, and I don't think that did him any favors to have, because he wasn't, he came from a fairly nice, normal background in England, and yet he was trying to act one of these posh people. I don't know why anyone would want to act posh. I mean, I think that's boring. If you're going to, I'd rather act common if it was him. It'd be more interesting. But anyway, he was acting posh, and he desperately wanted to belong to this arts and culture group of people. So he was going along to openings of book launches and art gallery openings and all. And he was trying to fit in, and he was trying to be one of them. But they didn't want him. It's like you look at I like bird watching, and you look at some poor little jackdaw or something. He doesn't fit in with the other birds, and they all peck him and try to make him go away. And this is the one I usually feed. So I think this is I take pity on the one who's the outsider. But this is the same thing with any group of animals or people. There's always one who kind of wants to belong, and the others don't want that person to belong. So that's what happened to him.
Yeah. So after 30 minutes, I have the impression that there's something on you that is genuinely interested in outsiders. Maybe there is some passion. Maybe it resonates with you. Did you ever think about it?
Yeah, I know. I've always been interested in. I think probably because I think everyone maybe has felt like an outsider at some point. I mean, people don't like to admit this, but I mean, I used to like reading when I was a child, and I don't think I've just I had a few friends who did, but the thing was I just read something by one of them recently, and she was an outsider as well. So, and we were actually friends in school, but I think that if you don't fit in with your peers for whatever reason, I mean, I grew up in Wexford when I was a child, so I kind of had a bit of a Wexford accent as well. I spent most of my childhood with my grandmother in Wexford, my early childhood. So I used to spend like the whole summer with her, and then I'd go back to school in Dublin, and I wouldn't have this Dublin accent. So I think, and I liked reading, and it was, whereas other people liked, music and sports and things, So I think, and yet, I don't think I was a complete outsider. I mean, I had friends, and I did like some of the things the others like. But if you were someone like Ian Bailey, he was completely cut off from his background. He was just, he just left behind his working class background. So he was an extreme outsider. I mean, everyone has been an outsider at some point. We've all gone to a party where we didn't know anyone, or we've all started a new job where we're the new person. But we usually kind of after a while we find something in common with other people. But he was trying to set himself. He was trying to find something in common with people who didn't want him, and he was setting himself apart from people who could have been his friends. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what I think.
I think one of the reasons why people don't like real and true outsiders like him is because
Yeah.
there is a lot of, there's a lot of envy. They look at them and they think, I wish I had the courage, to step forward, pursue what I'm interested in. So it's not that people hate the outsider, they just would like to be him, but they cannot. So, and the way
Yeah.
they have to deal with that, it's to detest that person just because he's showing their own frustration.
Yeah. But as well as that, even when he got old, he lost his good looks as he got old. Really, he got very overweight, and he, everything that made him attractive just went, and with the alcoholism and the drug taking. And I think, I think they actually indulged in Schadenfreude then, where it was it was delightful for some people to see this person that used to be so much handsomer than them, and suddenly he was taken down not only to the same level as them, but way below them. So I think there's this awful thing to people, like, to some people, and I think it might be just a flock thing again. They want to see the one who's going around boasting and all, the outsider, suddenly get him cut down and then to stamp on him, and that's what it was. But I'm not saying people do this deliberately. It's just an instinctual thing. And I hope I haven't done it to anyone myself. I'm trying to think if I've ever othered people, but I mean, I think we probably all have. We probably all kind of seen people that didn't fit in, and we kind of ignored them or whatever, because we were a bit afraid of them even, I mean, sometimes it's just fear of the outsider.
Yeah, if you don't know how they act, how they operate, what's the best angle to approach? It's always a question mark. You might know, but you only know after you are dealing with a person. One
Yeah,
of
but
your
I'm
books
thinking
is
of this
called
like, yeah, but I'm
Chasing
thinking about this like,
Casanova. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
when you see people that you're kind of afraid of, say you go into a neighborhood, and it's a place, like I've often gone into neighborhoods when I was working as a reporter, and you say, oh, you've heard all these stories about people here and they're scary and dangerous, and you would be kind of, you'd be less likely to trust people in a place like that. But I always kind of try to find common ground. But I think I probably have, felt this thing, to this instinct where I want to belong to my own flock as well, and I feel safer with people who are more like me as well. So we've all done it. Like, I don't think anyone's immune to this.
Of course, we're all there. We're all there. So you have a book called Chasing Casanova. I love the title. Now it's my time to be envy. Now it's I'm going to admit it in public. I wish I would be the author of. I like my book titles. They're on my bookshelf there. But no, I never wrote a book
Actually,
called Chasing Casanova.
you're quite prolific. You're an author as well. And I read some of your poetry, and it's great. But yeah, the Chasing Casanova was just, I wrote that for fun. I was actually working as a language teacher in Italy at the time, and it was that book is just complete fiction.
Mm.
I mean,
Is it
okay.
what is it a novel? What is it?
Yeah, it's a novel about, it's just a novel about a Dublin girl who goes to live in Italy. And I know it wasn't about me. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, people always say,
Right.
"Oh, did you write about?" It definitely wasn't. I mean, I wasn't anything like the girl in the book. But she has a kind of an eccentric family back in Dublin, and then she decides she's sick of this, and she's sick of her. And she was a journalist as well. But I mean, that's where the similarities end. She goes to work in Italy, and she gets into all these escapades with unsuitable men, because I met lots of lovely men in Italy, of course, but I mean, this girl's adventures were like the type of adventures I wouldn't like to get involved in. So I just gave her a kind of a strange, adventurous life in Italy, and she kept meeting eccentric people there as well. She'd come from an eccentric family, and she met more eccentric English teachers in Italy. So there's absolutely nothing based on reality in that book. I
How
wrote it
how
along.
how can you be sure? Because one of the challenges I have as an author when I'm writing fiction, I have memoirs as well, but when I'm writing fiction, I know there's always a part of me that is there, and there's nothing I can do to avoid it. Of course, I can measure, I can make sure that it's not impacting the story in a way that it's not fiction anymore. But how do you build the gap between yourself and the story?
Well, I think because I mean, there's a little bit of every, there's a little bit of yourself in every character you write, I suppose. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of getting into all the characters in the book, And I think that's how I do it really, because you can't do that in real life, but in the book you can kind of you can be the other characters in the book as well, because you have to see it from their point of view as well. So I think that's how really, and because the character is so unlike me, I mean, she really is. I mean, I'd love to be, in some ways, I'd love to be like her. So it's kind of more a fantasy of wanting to be like this person when I'm writing fiction, and sometimes not wanting to be like this person. Sometimes the person is a cautionary tale. So she's a bit of both. She's a bit of a fantasy, and she's a bit of a cautionary tale as well. Which, I mean, she's a lot more glamorous than me for a start, and she's also a lot more reckless, and she takes more risks. And I'm not a risk taker. This person really is a risk taker. So I suppose that's what makes her so like me. And the characters she met as well, they're really off the wall, I think.
I think that sometimes we come up with characters that are not us, but they are what we would like to be, or what we
if
would not
you're
like
brave
to be.
enough, or if you're foolish enough,
Yes.
If I was really foolish, I threw all caution to the wind. Part of me would like to do some of the things that this girl did.
Yeah. I can relate to that too. Another book is called Undead to Me, and that's apparently a horror story.
Yeah. Now this is a sequel. Now I actually changed the name of that title. So Undead to Me is going to be the sequel now, but I haven't had time to finish it. But it's actually the sequel to the other one, which I called On Rip, or like as in Rip, as in Rest in Peace, R.I.P. So it's the sequel to this, because I started writing the sequel first, and I went back to an earlier stage in the story when this person dies, and basically the beginning of this ghost story. And this is the thing I've been writing for about 20 years. It came about, I think, 2003 I started writing it. So it's more than 20 years in the making of the story. And it was originally going to be just a movie script, and then I ended up during the pandemic I started working on it, and then I got a writing mentor from the Irish Writers Centre, and he said, no, don't just do it as a script. He said, write the novel, actually finish the novel first. So I ended up writing it. So it's actually, Undead to Me is the follow-up to On Rip. And it wasn't meant to be a horror story. It was actually meant to be a thriller about. And I was partly inspired by Ian Bailey, not only in the most tenuous way, because I have a mother who's accused of murdering her daughter. Her daughter's found murdered, and this poor woman is accused of murdering her, and she absolutely didn't do it. But while I was writing it, I started wondering, did she do it? That's what I always do. I always question myself when I write fiction. And there were a lot of twists in it then, but in the end, it turned into a horror story, because the writing mentor I had said, this is actually a horror story, not a, and I ended up putting more horror scenes into it then. And I had great fun writing it. I had great fun writing both those books, so I still have to finish the second one.
Yeah, that's very important.
And I write them under pen names, by the way. I don't write them under my own name. I wasn't even going to release my own name, because I don't want people reading them and saying, oh, that's Geraldine Comsey, the journalist that wrote that, because that kills the buzz, I think. And my name doesn't work for horror. I mean, Geraldine Comsey doesn't sound right for horror fiction. Whereas the name I picked, I call myself Anita Hall for the horror fiction.
All right. Yeah, so in terms of writing routine, how do you make sure that you have not only time but the right mindset?
I just do it as I do it like in between other things, and I do it when I get the urge. And I find that it's kind of, writing is like reading for me. It's kind of an addiction. I mean, I like nothing better than to read or to write, and they both work out the same thing. It's not like journalism, fiction writing. Journalism is work, whereas fiction writing isn't. I still have to do research for it, but the research is just to make the story plausible. But the thing about fiction is it has to be more plausible than non-fiction, because with factual work you just have to check the facts, and they're either there or they're not there. Whereas with fiction, it has to be plausible, so you have to follow everything to its logical conclusion. So the funny thing is, fiction is more truthful, I think, than non-fiction, because non-fiction, there's lots of holes and you might never find the truth. Whereas with fiction, you have to find the truth, or you haven't got a story. If you're reporting on something in the news, say for example the murder of Madame Tosca de Ploddy, we might never find out who murdered her for sure. I mean, I have a theory, other people have theories, but all you have to go on is what the forensics found, or what people said, or hearsay and forensics. Whereas with my story On Rip and Undead to Me, there's on Rip starts off with a girl is murdered, and she's a young budding rock star. She's a wannabe rock star and celebrity, and she's a bit obnoxious, and a lot of people would have had reasons to kill her. But I couldn't just leave it there. I couldn't just leave it open and have evidence and all. I had to have why these people might have wanted to kill her, and then I had to, then of course all this other stuff starts. I mean, she becomes a cult heroine. She has people holding witch talk rituals in a graveyard and all. She has her friends, her former school friends, and her fans that all turning up at her funeral, and and she has all these goth kids because she's a goth girl, and she's a fake animal rights activist, So I got in a lot of stuff that I'm really interested in into that book, which you couldn't do in a factual book because you have to stick to the bare facts. But I think, yeah. So in a strange way, fiction has more truth in it than factual books.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with factual books, the truth is hidden.
Yeah.
There's the truth is there, but it could be hidden. Whereas with fiction, you can't hide the truth. It has to come out somewhere.
You seem very, very interested in the truth, like accessing what's real and getting to the real thing. You are not just like fooling around. I think there is something on you that wants to you want to put the hands on what's happening, and you don't want to be told, and you want to be there. Is it something related to the fact that you are a reporter?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, but I mean, I think it goes back to childhood. I think people. I think everyone has that when they're a child. I mightn't have lost it. I think some people. When they become adults, they don't want to find the truth. They just want to get on with their lives, and they want to just this narrow path, money, career. All the milestones. But I think with me, I've been on this kind of search for the truth for years, and I don't think you'll ever find the whole truth. I mean, the truth is there's always something ahead and ahead. But I just love exploring ideas, and I love I love looking at different angles. When I was in school, for example, we used to have debates, and my English teacher, a guy called Hugo Malone, he used to ask me to argue both sides of the debate, just to kickstart the debate. Started off by arguing for both sides. So I've always done that, and I think there aren't just two sides. There are actually loads of sides in every debate. So whenever I get a story, I always start, well, what else could it be? And what else could it be? And what else could be happening? And I mean, I used to annoy my editors in the newspapers when they send me on a story sometime, and I'd say, but I don't think this is the real story. There's something else here, and I don't. And they say, look, it's just a harmless little PR story. And I said, no, I want to find, if it was about some annoying celebrity, I'd say, no, that's not true. Actually, there's more to this story. Or with some sort of advertising. I spot an advertising gimmick, for example. I spot when somebody's trying to use the newspaper to advertise something and to push an angle. So, but this is, I think reporters do this all the time. I think every editor has had the frustrating experience of having a reporter argue with them over a story and say, no, I want to stay longer in the story because there's more to find out. So, it's like digging and every time you dig, you find something else, and then you have to dig for it, and you find something else over there. That's what journalism is like. So I've just kind of moved this into fiction now, and fiction is even better because I can actually find the facts. I can make up the story, but it has to be plausible. So it's like I feel like I'm discovering the thing. I don't feel like I'm writing it. I don't feel like I'm inventing a story. I feel like it's there, and I'm just discovering it.
Yeah, it totally resonates with me. But I would say, like, people like us are struggling these days because the truth is an assault, or at least it's not that popular. It seems that everyone can come up with their own conception of themselves, or they can identify as whatever they feel like. And how do you see the fact that everything now is like relative?
When people talk about their truth, what they mean is they couldn't be bothered to look at they couldn't be bothered to look at things from another angle. That's what I usually find. I mean, this thing about there are loads of genders. I mean, okay, look at animals. Do they think there are loads of genders? I understand that there are people who feel they were born in the wrong body, and I've interviewed a few people. I've interviewed a few people who said they were born as men and they really were women. And I'm not going to doubt them because I believe that they really were probably born in the wrong body. But I just don't believe that you can objectively say that somebody is a woman, even if they're standing in front of you and they're a man, or vice versa. So I think maybe they want to be a woman. That's what I think, and they were psychologically born in the wrong body, and they're perfectly entitled to transition if they want to do that and to be called a woman. But to actually try to convince the rest of us that there are more than two genders, I think that's where
Yeah.
I mean, and then to call it hate speech, when I actually think, I mean, how is it hateful when you're trying to protect young people from being told that, say, a little boy decides one day he wants to be a girl, and someone said, okay, we'll get you gender surgery and mutilate this child. I mean, how is it hateful to try and stop that, and to try and say, no, let that child, tell the child he is a boy, and when he's an adult, if he wants to become a woman, let him do that. But the whole gender wars thing has turned into a thing where you have to believe somebody, even if they're deluding themselves, and you have to not help them. You have to let them live in their delusion, because
Yeah.
it's their truth. I don't believe anyone has a right to just call it my truth. I think if I was deluded as a child, if I wanted to be a rabbit, or I wanted to be a horse, for example, as a child, I did actually want, was a very small child. Another time I wanted to be a princess. I mean, can you imagine if my parents said, you are actually a princess, you're actually the princess, and you're going to live in the castle, and oh yeah, and you're also a horse, and like other kids that wanted to be dogs, cats, rabbits. Imagine you told the child you can go out and live in the garden. Then you can't. So I think
Yeah.
when people start talking about their truth, they need to kind of think, just you can't do that. So I do think that's what's gone wrong with wokeism, because otherwise I'd
Yeah.
be quite woke. I'm all for people being allowed to be gay. I mean, of course, I've nothing against gay people, but if you're telling people that, say a gay teenager, oh, you're a boy, so you fancy other boys. Oh, do you ever think you might be a girl? I mean, that's abusive. That's actually emotional
Yeah.
abuse of a teenager, I think.
And I think the other issue is that they want us to ask what gender they are before we address them. That's the other thing. Like, I don't mind much if Mary thinks that she's John, or John thinks he is Mary. I'm fine with that. But I can make assumptions. If I look at someone and I think his name might be John and not Mary, just because of the looks, that has to be acceptable, because it's my
I'm afraid
perception.
I mean, you'd be afraid to say to someone, are they a human or are they an animal? Imagine you said, I don't actually know if that's a dog or a person. It's gone into this really, it's an existential threat to people's minds, actually, what's happening. The woke agenda has gone to the level of absurdity now, that you couldn't actually, you couldn't even, it wouldn't even be plausible in science fiction. If someone had written this, I don't think even George Orwell could have written the absurdity that's happening now. He couldn't have imagined it, because it wouldn't be plausible in fact or fiction.
Yeah,
so
that's actually a good example of the 84. It's a fiction book, but it tells a lot of truth. Although it's inspired in some of the events in USSR and Germany of the 40s and all that, but he's telling the truth more than the journalists. Is he like a role model for you in some sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because I think the whole thing, I read 1984 years ago, and I read another one. I read a few of George Orwell's books, including a lesser known one called "Keep the Aspidistra Flowing." Now, an aspidistra was a plant, but he was a kind of satirical book. But Animal Farm, of course, and 1984. But yeah, what he's talking about. I mean, we have in every level of society, not just at state level, at not just at international level, but even in daily life. I mean, we have a 1984 situation now. We actually literally have Newspeak, only it's called My Truth and Your Truth, and we live in what some people have called a post-truth society.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, if anyone has studied art will know that, art. I studied art too, but you're told to paint, and then you're told to paint decaying things, and you're told to deconstruct all the rules of everything. So you learn how to do proportions and everything. Then you learn how to kind of break them up, and how to do modern art. Basically, is basically the decay of classical art. Well, it's the same with the truth. I mean, we're actually in a decadent era now. It's like the Weimar Republic, only in journalism and in public politics.
Yeah. Going back to your voice, so you collaborated with very much left-leaning newspapers, but also others on the that will be called conservative, or let's call it right-wing, just to make it simple. So how you make sure that you are true to yourself?
Well, I just write the truth, and if somebody, and I find generally, if I write what I can stand over what I write, and I can't control what else is in the newspaper or magazine. I've no right to either. I mean, other people, the opinion writers might be left wing or right wing, and the other writers, but I'm only responsible for what I write, and you know, I mean, generally editors don't. You know, when I was younger, they might cut things out or but generally, like they leave it in more or less verbatim. You know, like as you get older, editors generally don't interfere with what you write. But I never cared whether the newspaper or magazine was right or left leaning, you know, as long as they just let me do my job, because you can't control everything. I mean, there's no such thing as a neutral newspaper, and there's no such thing as objectivity. I don't think it really exists. You know, I think anyone who claims to be objective is just fooling themselves. You know, we try. All you can do is try, you know, and all you can do is hope that someone will correct you if you're wrong. And
it's what I would call an aspiration. It's a noble aspiration, but it's not that much attainable. It's good to have. I'd say it's good to have that mindset. I try to be as objective as possible, but knowing that you cannot, and that's fine. And be okay with that.
Be open to correction. Be open to people. I'm open to people telling me if I'm wrong about something. You know, if forensics prove, for example, that Ian Bailey was the murderer, I mean, I'd have to rewrite that book. You know, I'd probably have to just get rid of the book, but because I based the whole book on belief that he didn't do it. But I think that you're entitled to make an educated guess in a case like this. You know. But I mean, you must have found writing poetry as well. Poetry is I think poetry is even more than fiction. Poems tell even more truth, because you know they kind of come from the heart, don't they?
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't thought of that, but like there's nothing of lying when you are writing poetry. There could be plenty of other things, but lying is not one of them for sure.
And you wrote poems about art, which is even more. It's like a double truth, because paintings are truth as well. You know, they're.
Yeah. That's I haven't thought of that, but maybe that's I think poetry, it's an exercise of honesty. It cannot be any different. Like you cannot be dishonest when you are writing a poem. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. So
do you read your books after being published, or your articles after being released, or you prefer to stay away from them?
Yeah, I have to read them back when other people are commenting on them, you know, because they take issue with something I've written, and I might argue back or something, but I generally move on to the next project. You know, I just allow myself a little bit of satisfaction when I've completed something. But or if I have to follow up something, I might have to refer to my notes from earlier. But I tend not to dwell. I tend not to get stuck on one topic too long, you know, because I've always been interested in the variety part of journalism. That's what I liked about journalism, because I'm interested in so many things. I just couldn't focus on one thing. So that's why I didn't choose a more conventional career either, because I didn't want to get stuck in one subject. So I tend to move on and write about something else. You know, I'm always writing about different things. I'm actually writing another horrors at the moment. So you know, and
you read my mind, because that would be my next question. What are you working on at the moment?
I'm writing another horror story, and I was going to be a short story, because I wanted to write a few short. I wanted to build up a collection of short stories, but it ended up getting longer and longer. And it's the kind of thing, I was up like all night last night writing it, and then I was not the night before. Last night, another reason I couldn't sleep. But I was sometimes I write late at night, and sometimes I write in the daytime if I get a chance. But I'm writing another suit on him. And I'm trying to. I only meant to write a short story, but this character is kind of taking over now. And she started going off on a tangent, and you know, the story is turning out very different to what I intended anyway. But I think horror is much underrated as well. I think horror is all about existential threats to us, and you know, it's about it's about our souls. I mean, the great questions the great big questions are dealt with in horror. It's not a trivial subject at all, even though, you know, I write it for fun. So I always find I start writing something to relax for fun, and then I end up, you know, really enjoying, really delving into it and doing research and going back on stories I wrote as a journalist to get. I mean, for example, stories about exorcisms and people who lived in houses that they believed were haunted, and people with psychological issues. And this is all coming into the story now. So I haven't made up my mind yet whether this person in the story is crazy or whether she really is living in a haunted house and has had all sorts of things happen to her because something happened there. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. And in between real work, in between actually helping people with their own stories and the paid work, in between all these things.
So as we come to an end, can you let us know where folks can find your books?
Well, I have them all on Amazon. All of them are on Amazon. And I mean, one of them was published by a conventional publisher, but I prefer to publish it myself. I might go back to going through a publisher again, but I had a funny experience with a publisher. They didn't pay me all of the advance that they were supposed to pay me. So I just saw I cut my losses and I just published them myself. So I'm probably going to publish this next one myself again. I'll think about it. But Amazon anyway has all my books anyway.
Yeah.
Amazon.com.co.uk.
I think it was in the summer I had a chat with another Irish author who lives in Italy, and she was saying that in Ireland there's still a significant appetite for reading and for books as objects. Would you agree with that? And is there a rationale for that?
For books, for people, just for reading. Yeah. I think the Irish. I think we love storytellers. We love telling stories, and I mean, if I go back to like when I spent my childhood in Wexford, my granny used to be always telling me stories, and she heard stories from other old people. And the tradition of the Shamaki, the old storyteller. You heard these stories about people telling stories and go years ago people used to sit around by the fireside, or in one case my granny and my mother used to go, and all my uncle and aunt and all used to go to this old woman's house, and she was bedridden, this woman was, and she was nearly blind, and she used to have all her family and neighbours gathered around her. She used to tell ghost stories. So I think that's the Irish. The Irish love kind of dark stories and stories with a dark side to them, with also with humour. And you can't stop the humour coming in. Humour will come into everything. And we also like stories, just general stories, because I think maybe, I mean, I found the Italians like stories as well. Maybe everyone likes stories everywhere. In America,
another one is radio that is still very popular in Ireland, and I think it's for the same reasons that people like to listen to a story, and the not just reading it, but when there is someone telling a story to them, that's something that Irish people are into.
Yeah, and that's why people like podcasts as well. I think it's lovely to go to sleep listening to a story. But in Italy, the famous stories, the Decameron by Boccaccio, that was banned in Italian schools for years. I went over there and I tried to read it in the old Italian. I couldn't really. I struggled because I learned Italian, but I couldn't. It was kind of difficult. I kind of was able to read some of it, but it wasn't real Italian. But so I got it in English, and but I mean, they're fantastic stories. I mean, they're really, really kind of funny, and they're farcical and funny. And I think the Italians and the Irish are the same. I'm sure maybe everywhere in the world. I don't have much experience with Portuguese, but I'm sure in Portugal you probably have storytellers as well.
Yeah, we say we are a country of poets, where there are more poets than poetry readers.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, it's lovely, and your language lends itself to poetry as well. It's just I think when people speak in their own language, when I hear people speaking in real Irish, not this fake Irish we learned in school, but real Irish as well, it's probably like you'd hear people speaking in Portuguese, or I used to hear people speaking in Italian. You hear people speaking in their native language, the language of their ancestors. I think the poetry sounds even better.
Yeah, and another one. I would add, I don't know, are you translated to any language? Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't translate poetry. I don't think poetry should be translated. I think it should be. I don't think
is is any of your books translated to, I don't know, Italian or something?
No,
not yet.
No, well, I haven't certainly done them. I wouldn't be confident. But yeah, I've done. I can translate into English. Yeah, but not.
Yeah.
Not by.
Here's my call for people. There is a translator out there interested in Geraldine books. Go ahead, because I can tell you by experience, it's one of the most beautiful things that can happen in for an author is to see your stuff translated to a foreign language, because it's your book and it's not, so it's magical. I have stuff translated to Spanish, Polish, Hungarian, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just you feel that the effort you put on the book made completely sense after that.
And I'm sure the translator probably, I mean, it's great to see it through somebody else's eyes. I mean, you've written this book in your own language. You probably wrote them in Portuguese or English. Did you write them originally in Portuguese and they were translated from that?
Like sometimes I write in Portuguese or in English. It depends on the topic and the public. So it really depends. Nowadays, it's more English than Portuguese, but that can change. It's all about my life stage.
Well, you have a famous poem by Martin Niemöller, and he was German, and that works in English. I mean, it does work sometimes. Translating poetry does. So yeah, I mean, I think that in these cases, the translator also has to be a great writer. I think the
Yes.
translator has to be a poet as well to do that.
It helped a lot. Like I translated some people's poems to Portuguese or to Spanish, and I think the fact that I'm familiar with the process, it's a complete game changer.
Yeah, and I can't imagine AI doing this. I mean, I can't imagine. Like have you ever tried Google Translate? It doesn't work. I've tried this with Italian to see, and it isn't. I know it's wrong. And I know nobody would say those things the way Google Translate translates them. So because when I was in Italy, I found that I would be able to think in Italian and English quite easily, but I wouldn't say the same thing but I wouldn't translate something directly. I mean, when I was interpreting for people when they were speaking, I would be saying something a bit different because they wouldn't quite say it like that in English, even though the exact translation, dictionary translation, is not the right way to say something. So I don't think there's anything such thing as a direct translation. So I don't think robots will ever take the translators' jobs.
No. They are a complement. They are a tool. It helps, but they cannot do the whole job. Yeah. But if you don't mind, let's read the translation for another time. It's already above 1 hour. So maybe you can have a part 2 about translation, language, all that. And there's so many things we can cover, but unfortunately we need to come to an end. So thanks very much for the chat. All the best with your next horror book and whatever you have on your end. And I hope I can see you around one of these days.
Yeah, it's been very interesting. I really has been. I didn't realize you're neighbours as well. Anyway, thanks very much for having me on. It was very interesting. Thank you. Thanks, Vitor.
Take care. And just for the public out there, we will be live again tomorrow. To be myself and Marco Alexander, my co-host, we will be discussing Palestine. Palestine. They say it's a country, but I'm not sure about that. But we will be controversial tomorrow. And then Thursday we have the football session. So stay around, same time, same channel, and same face. So see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good evening. Bye. Bye.